Have you ever wondered why that coffee from your favorite cafe just hits different? Why it's so much better than what you can make at home? Well, you might be overlooking the single most important ingredient. Today, we're diving deep into the science of water for coffee.
I mean, it's so easy to just completely forget about it, but think about this for a second. Over 98% of your cup of filtered coffee, it's just water.
And that incredibly simple fact hides this whole complex world of chemistry that can literally make or break your brew.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with why water is so critical in the first place. Then we'll introduce the chemical components you absolutely need to know. We'll explore that central conflict between great flavor and keeping your equipment safe, look at some surprising new research, and then finally give you the tools you need to take control of your own brew.
Okay, let's start by meeting the key players. To really get a handle on the role water plays, we first need to know what's actually in it that's affecting your coffee so much.
For the longest time, the coffee world was absolutely obsessed with something called TDS, or total dissolved solids. But it's a really general measurement. It tells you how much stuff is in the water, but it doesn't tell you what that stuff is. And as you'll see, that's the part that really matters.
Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. General hardness, or GH, is basically your flavor-extracting horsepower. It's mostly made up of calcium and magnesium in particular is fantastic at grabbing onto those flavor compounds.
But, and this is a big but, maybe the single most important factor of all is alkalinity. You might also hear it called KH, or buffer. This is the thing that controls the acidity of your final cup. It's huge.
And here's a super common point of confusion. Alkaline is not the same thing as alkalinity. They sound similar, but they're totally different concepts. You could have a water with a high pH, making it alkaline, but it can have very low alkalinity, and vice versa. I love this quote from coffee expert Scott Rao because it just nails the concept. Think of alkalinity as the water's stubbornness against the coffee's natural acids. Too much of that stubbornness, and your coffee tastes flat and dull. Too little, and all that acidity just becomes harsh and aggressive.
Here's another great way to think about it. It's kind of like the difference between temperature and heat capacity. Two different bodies of water can have the exact same pH, right? But the one with higher alkalinity has way more power to neutralize acids. Just like a stone bench holds on to way more heat than a wooden one, even if they're the same temperature.
So now that we know the key components, we can finally talk about the central conflict, the big problem that every coffee lover and every cafe owner has to deal with.
It's this constant balancing act. On one hand, you absolutely need minerals like magnesium and calcium to get great flavor. But on the other hand, those exact same minerals, especially calcium, can build up inside your expensive coffee machine as limescale and totally destroy it.
Thankfully, we're not just guessing here. The Specialty Coffee Association has actually defined a target sweet spot for us. And just look at the target for total alkalinity. It's super specific. That really drives home just how important it is for hitting that perfect balance between amazing taste and not wrecking your gear. So, for the longest time, we thought we knew exactly how all these minerals worked. But, as it turns out, recent science has thrown a fascinating twist into the mix.
A recent study was designed to test the belief that's been around forever. The idea that minerals like calcium and magnesium are actively ripping more flavor compounds out of the coffee grounds during brewing.
But the conclusion was, well, pretty surprising. It turns out that adding the minerals before or after you brew resulted in a very similar amount of acids in the final cup. This totally challenges that old idea that these minerals are just extraction aids.
So, wait a second. If they aren't just pulling out more stuff, then what in the world is their main role?
Well, the new theory is that the minerals are more likely changing the chemistry of the final drink itself. They're interacting with the flavor compounds already in the cup, which then changes how our taste buds perceive things like acidity and sweetness. So here's the key takeaway. It's not just about extraction, it's about perception.
All right, that's a lot of science, I know. But how can you actually use all this information in your own kitchen? Let's make this practical.
It really boils down to a simple three-step plan. First, you've got to know your starting point, so test your tap water's GH and KH. Second, pick a strategy that works for you. And third, and this is always the most important part, taste the results and tweak from there.
You basically have a few paths you can take. You can use a simple filter, which helps with taste but doesn't change the minerals much. You can find a good bottled water that you like. Or, for the real enthusiasts out there, you can build your own water from scratch with mineral packets. That gives you complete control.
Reverse osmosis, or RO, is a super popular way to create that perfect blank slate water to build from. But it's kind of a double-edged sword. It strips out everything, the good stuff and the bad stuff. That's why adding those beneficial minerals back in is so critical if you decide to go down this path.
And just when you think you've got it all figured out, there's one more layer to peel back. The actual type of salt you use to add those minerals, whether it's a chloride or a sulfate, can also have a pretty big impact on the final flavor.
This right here is really the next frontier of coffee water. It just goes to show you that from a simple glass of H2O all the way to the complex decision of which mineral salt to use, there's always more to discover in the quest for that perfect cup.